Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Rose Horowitz. I'm a Pulitzer nominated journalist and the founder of Woman to Follow. I'm thrilled to host episode 27 of my Woman to Follow show with my incredible guest, April Rain. We will meet April shortly. Give a shout out to my producer, Stefan Kaplan, the Spin It Social on Twitter. Please join us on Facebook, Twitter at Rose Horowitz or Woman to Follow, LinkedIn, or my Woman to Follow YouTube channel. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It would mean a lot to me. The show is also streaming on April's Facebook and public Facebook channels. Thank you, April, for that. And you can ask questions on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, or send in comments. I would love to hear from you. And I would love to now introduce my guest, April Rain, who created the Oscars So White hashtag in 2015. The hashtag became a rallying cry for the shocking lack of diversity in the entertainment industry. And since she started the hashtag, Rain has sustained a social movement resulting in the most permanent, systematic change in the history of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. In 2016, the Academy voted unanimously to institute changes to its membership and governance policies with the aim of doubling the number of women and underrepresented groups by 2020. April is a senior advisor for entertainment and media for the Gage Digital Media. She's collaborated with Procter & Gamble, Twitter, HBO, and other organizations. You can follow April Rain on Twitter and Instagram at Reign of April. Reign of April has a very big following on Twitter, almost 200,000, and is very active on Instagram and most of the other platforms. So welcome, April. Hi, April.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me. So honored to have you.
I appreciate it.
So I guess I would want to start out with, many people I mentioned I was at a dinner with my friends and I mentioned Oscar So White and they're like, oh yeah, everybody had heard of it. But if, having you here as a guest, if you could tell us how that started, so we hear it from you.
Sure. In 2015, I was a practicing attorney. I worked in campaign finance law. It had no nexus whatsoever to the entertainment industry. I was a huge entertainment consumer, both little screen, big screen, and the stage. And so that particular morning, I was getting ready for work and watching the Oscar nominations on one of the morning programs. And it just struck me that category after category, there were no people of color nominated for any of the acting categories. This was 2015, so we're talking about 2014 films. So things like Beyond the Lights and Selma and so many other great performances that were overlooked. And so Twitter is my social media platform of choice. And I picked up my phone and tweeted, Oscar So White, they asked to touch my hair. And that was it. We were off to the races.
And when you said they asked to touch my hair, which I see, I'm just going to have the light on. Maybe that'll help. What was that meant for those of us who may not get the joke?
Sure. Black women historically have had to deal with non-Black people touching our hair for whatever reason, because it's different or not like theirs or what have you, even though my hair grows out of my head the same way that yours does. And so typically it is white people who very often invade our space without permission and touch our hair without asking, without any type of, forethought. And so that was the reference that I was using.
And what happened when that hashtag went out? Like what happened?
The hashtag, I initially went on to work. This was not my first viral hashtag. It would not be my last. So
Uh-huh.
it was just a one-off. This was not, that I've had other hashtags that I was attempting to be intentional, and I wanted them to trend and do something, but that was
Mhm.
not this. So I just checked in around lunchtime a few hours later, and based on that one tweet, Oscar So White, the hashtag was trending around the world. And Twitter, the company, or at least the old Twitter,
Mhm.
uses I guess, the phenomenon of Oscar So White as they talk to new and current employees. And I think in the first month, the hashtag was used over 600,000 times or something insane.
Amazing. Uh, and I just in looking at, just looking at the hashtag and stories about it, it was covered everywhere, in this country, in entertainment publications, in the Guardian, all over the world about how that, it's really a credible 3 words that that had such a tremendous impact. Uh, and what happened, so that was in 2015, and then you again referred to that. What was was there any change in representation for blacks and other underrepresented groups in 2016? Because I think you used the hashtag again, of course, but
I used it, unfortunately, because it was still relevant in
yeah,
2016.
right.
So when the nominations came out in early 2016, once
Hmm.
again, there were no people of color nominated for any of the acting categories.
Hmm.
And so in fact, Oscar So White really took off the second year in 2016, even more than 2015. And I think that was in part because people, journalists, media folks, everyone thought, okay, well, one time is a fluke, but 2 or more times, especially consecutively, is a pattern. And so that is when, and in addition, there were other celebrities who took hold of it as well. Jada Pinkett Smith was using the hashtag in part because her husband, Will Smith, was not nominated for, I think the
Hmm.
movie was Concussion. And so there
Okay.
was a huge conversation. Reverend Al Sharpton was talking about boycotting the Oscars, which was not my thing, but was his. And so after the second time, when the Academy saw that there was a significant problem that wasn't going away, they made some changes, including under the then president Cheryl Boone Isaacs, who is a Black woman. They said that they were going to double the number of people of color and double the number of women within their membership ranks by 2020. So they gave themselves 4 years. And
Hmm.
in fact, they hit those goals,
Hmm.
which was great because it meant that there were a lot more people of color and people from marginalized communities and women who were in the Academy who had not been. A
Hmm.
lot of folks don't realize that to become a member of the Academy,
Hmm.
there are very strict guidelines. One of which is, you either have to be nominated or win an award. And again, if people of color and women aren't being nominated in various categories, then that's not going to happen. The second
Hmm.
way is to be fostered or mentored in. So people have to recommend. You have to be referred into it.
Okay.
And then again, if your circle of influence and friends is particularly small, then you're probably only going to be recommending and referring people who look like you. So again, it's a
Hmm.
problem. So people like Melvin Van Peebles, who is, vanguard in Black cinema with the Black
Hmm.
exploitation films of the early 70s, Julie Dash,
Hmm.
who created Daughters of the Dust. Those people were now invited to join the Academy who had not
Hmm.
been, despite having made seminal work decades earlier.
Hmm.
So it was great that the Academy doubled the number of people of color and doubled the number of women. But when you're going from 8 to 16, when the overall percentage of people of color in this country is, over 30%,
Hmm.
then you really haven't done enough work. And that's why I think we still continue to see the issues that we do.
Okay. We have some people watching. I'm sorry, Marla Campbell Harris. Salute to the April Rain, the brilliance and necessity and the power of using social media to evoke change and foster greater accountability. Uh, and some other comments from people watching. Ross Brand. I don't know if you know Ross, but he's a live stream expert and social media expert who's saying congrats on my 1 year anniversary of my show. And Brent Manuel, uh, a friend, is watching from Ottawa, Canada. So great to hear everybody watching. Please share this if you're watching on Twitter, if you're watching with your friends. And tell for those of us, how has I think before Oscar So White, one of the hashtag uh, Black Lives Matter had trended. So what tell us about, for people who aren't on Twitter, what is the power and what is the uniqueness of Twitter as a platform to 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 create a social, to help create a social movement for change?
I think that Twitter is different for everyone. In my mind, Twitter is the most communal of all of the different platforms. So, you think about Instagram, which is great, but it's visually based.
Mm,
So hashtags obviously work there, and they love hashtags, but it's
mhm,
just not the same with respect to
mhm,
searching them.
mhm,
Facebook, you really can only have one conversation at a time.
mm.
And you have to invite people to be your friends. And so you may not be talking to people all around the world if you don't know people all around the world, right? Uh,
Right.
Twitter, on the other hand, is, in my mind, much more communal. I can have several different conversations about different things all at once with people all over the world. And I think that's really wonderful. And they're actual conversations. So we can talk, we can debate, argue, or support and amplify everything that we're saying that has to do with a particular hashtag or a particular subject. And I find that really helpful, to getting the word out, to galvanizing people for whatever there may be, and actually bringing to bear a call to action.
Okay. Well, I first met you actually in 2016, a year after you created the hashtag. You had come to speak. Here's Sri Srinivasan, who's a professor, uh, still a professor now, I think, at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism continuing ed program. And he every year would do a social media conference and bring in people like you who had created, great things, or were from BuzzFeed or other public, other doing great things to talk. And I remember hearing your story, and I was so amazed that this had your hashtag had the impact it had. And I was lucky enough that, I put out a hashtag. I mean, I'd been started to be more active as a journalist on Twitter. And in 2018 I put out I'd read a story about the imbalance in women and men in Washington reporting, that most journalists, in the DC area would like is 82% of men would retweet and follow men, but the same was true for women. And I put out a tweet saying, let's get this party started. I'm going to name 3 women to follow, and I tagged some people in different fields. And like you, like a few hours later, it was like, oh, like what is happening? Um, and it's been really interesting to see that. So a lot of people who I might call now for my show, or um, have heard of the hashtag, and it's helped my career. But really, it's been a great rallying cry, and a call to action for people um, to amplify women's voices. So, um, you helped inspire me. So I thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. It's very
Yeah.
nice to hear.
um, how Ross Brand is saying Twitter is great for live events and breaking news. It's the place people are most likely to discuss what they're watching. And we see that with TV shows, right?
Every
Or
single piece of IP has its own hashtag now. And in
yes.
fact, Shonda Rhimes, who created Scandal, uh,
Hmm.
is very open about the fact that Scandal was nearly canceled. And then people started live tweeting it and
Mm,
using the hashtag. And that's what saved the show. And it became the juggernaut that it did. And then obviously, that gave Shonda more room to fly and create all the other amazing shows that she has
yeah.
in the past 10 years or so.
And one of my guests in, I guess, a year ago or so, not quite a year, was Jamie Broadnax, who would live tweet Scandal and a lot of shows, and that helped catapult her to found, Black Girl Nerds. Uh, and I think you. So tell me, and you have a connection with her. You've worked with her on some. So tell me about that.
Sure. I
Jamie.
mean, Jamie's a member of Black Twitter. Black Girl Nurse has done fantastic work amplifying those TV shows and movies that, are that provide examples of the Black experience. I
Hmm.
don't like to say Black film or Black TV show because no one ever says white film or white TV show.
Hmm.
And what we know is that everybody watches everything,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
the first Black Panther, for example, made over $1.4 billion worldwide. Well, that wasn't
Hmm.
just Black folks who watched the movie, even though
Hmm.
both cast and crew was predominantly Black. So I
Hmm.
think we should be very careful in the terms that we use. Nobody ever calls it, a men's film, like Dances with Wolves or A
Hmm.
Hangover or something like that. But Girls
Hmm.
Trip is, oh, well, that's a chick flick. And so,
Hmm.
and it's unfortunate because that means that because there are some people who, once you categorize something a certain way, they will automatically close down. Oh, okay, if that's a Black film or if that's a chick flick or whatever, then it's
Hmm.
not going to appeal to me, which is unfortunate because, if you think about, if I give you the premise of there are a group of friends reunite for a raucous time and hijinks ensue, right?
Hmm.
If they are
Hmm.
all white men, then that's Hangover. If they are all white women, that's Bridesmaids. If
Hmm.
they are all Black women, that's Girls Trip. But Hangover is never categorized as a guy's film, right? That's
Hmm.
just not a thing.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
we often hear, either Black film or chick flick or what have you. And that's unfortunate because it's the same premise,
Hmm.
right? And so we should be marketing these things to have the widest appeal possible so
Hmm.
that they can get, behinds in the seats if you're going into a theater or
Hmm.
streaming at home.
Hmm. Great points. Thank you. Great points to remember. How have you found, in the 5 weeks that Musk has ownership of Twitter? What has it been like for you? I mean, I would assume that Twitter is like sort of your home base. Your the platform you're on most. And I see, watching you, especially these past few days, that you're really active. You might post at least 10, 12 tweets a day, either retweets or your own tweets. And, how have you found it being on the platform now with the divisive, divisiveness that we know?
Yeah, I think if you only see 10 or 12 tweets from me, I'm either in the air or sick. and I
Okay.
typically have Wi-Fi on the plane. So
Okay. Well, then it should be more like 20 or 30.
at least,
Yeah. Okay.
yes. And I happily acknowledge that I'm addicted to Twitter. And so it has been very difficult
Mhm.
because we have seen so much change, and it's sort of we're all waiting for this other shoe to drop, right? So for
Yeah.
weeks now, we've been talking about, okay, well, we need to figure out where we're going because this thing only has a couple more days or a couple more weeks, and that's been dragging out. I remember wondering if we were going to make it to Thanksgiving, and now here we are, just 10 days or so from
Right.
Christmas.
And everybody
So
was writing like their eulogy, well,
absolutely,
it's
and
been great knowing
rightfully
you.
so. Rightfully
Yeah.
so. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a thing that we say, which is, we need to give our flowers to people while they're still alive,
Mm.
and I think we need to do that to social media platforms too, that
Yeah.
may or may not be on their last legs, because
Uh-huh.
Twitter literally changed my life.
Mhm.
Literally changed my life. I don't practice law anymore. I live in a completely different state, in a completely different time zone. I have received amazing opportunities because of the hashtags that I've created, and people just generally enjoying, I guess, my content. I've traveled the world because of Twitter, the various countries around the world that would not have happened. And I'm very, very honest and open about that. Again, this couldn't have happened, at least for me, via
Mhm.
any other social media platform. So watching Elon do his thing, I mean, part of it is he literally doesn't know what he's doing. He's not a tech guru. He didn't found Tesla. That wasn't his thing. His thing is coming in roughshod, buying up a company, and then kind of
Mhm.
running it into the ground.
Mhm.
And we've seen that with,
Mhm.
SpaceX, every now and again, a rocket, blows up, and then, one does
And he
well, I
says
guess.
that's part of the process, right?
Sure, right. But
Mhm.
to do it
Right.
so publicly,
Yeah.
when there is so much on the line,
Uh-huh.
perhaps that's not the best business model. He is being sued hand over fist by Black employees specifically,
Mhm.
because of the conditions at Tesla. He is being
Mhm.
sued by former Twitter employees. We call them
Mhm.
tweets,
Mhm.
because of the way that he fired people. So, and I get it. When a new CEO comes in, especially if the company is not doing well financially, and we all know, even when Jack was in charge, that it wasn't,
Mhm.
that there is going to be some upheaval. But typically, there is a transition period. You don't fire a third of the staff within the first couple of weeks. And in my mind, as a good leader, you are transparent about the things that you don't know, and you
Mhm.
hire
Yeah.
or promote or amplify those folks who do know. So, Elon, because you've never run a social media platform before, don't fire all the people who have been running the platform, because he
Right.
fired them and then he begged them to come back, and he was firing people publicly. Like, people were finding out that they had lost their job on Twitter, and that's
Right.
never how it should be. Uh,
Mhm.
so it's unfortunate, and as I say, we're just waiting to see whether the platform is going to last. There are several people who are attempting to create something new and different, which I think is great. We can always have more social media platforms,
Mhm.
but for those of us who have been on Twitter for a decade or more,
Mhm.
attempting to start over is going to be very difficult.
Yeah. Um, I don't know if you know Robert Anthony. He's a journalist, and I know him through Digimentors, part of Sri's startup. Twitter has been quite, and he covers tech. Twitter has been quite the dumpster fire since Elon Musk took over. Holding on to my account for now, but that could change. So, uh, Ross Brand is asking you, when choosing a hashtag, when do you decide to make up your own versus one already in use?
I very rarely use one that's already being used. If
Mhm.
I do, I'm amplifying somebody else's work. I think
Right.
it's, and we can have the conversation about the importance of owning your own IP and copyrights and
Mhm.
trademarks, and how
Mhm.
important that is, especially for Black creatives.
Mhm.
On Twitter, definitely on TikTok, there's been a lot of movement there, and so on. But when I'm creating a hashtag, there are a couple of rules, I guess, that I use. It has to be short and sweet. It has to be memorable.
Mhm.
Because when I created Oscar so white, and most of my hashtags, we were at 140 characters as opposed to 280.
Mhm.
So and so you had to, that hashtag
Yeah,
had to fit in with
definitely.
everything else
Yeah.
that you were trying to say.
Mhm.
So and you want something that is going to be unique, so that people know exactly what you're talking about as soon as it's used.
Mhm.
So Oscar So White was one. Women of Color Appreciation was another that I created.
Mhm.
Obviously, No Confederate, about the TV show that HBO was thinking about doing called
Mhm.
Confederate.
Mhm.
And that one I created in concert with other Black women.
Mhm.
She Will Rise, over my shoulder here is our logo. She Will Rise was about the not just Ketanji Brown Jackson, but the fight to have more Black women in the federal judiciary. So all
Mhm.
of them are short and sweet, and you
Mhm.
sort of get the gist of what they are, even if you don't have full context.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, I mean, I will use somebody else's hashtag if it's a tweet that I want to get out to a big audience, but if I'm creating my own hashtag, like when I did Women to Follow, well, I didn't know, I mean, I didn't know it would trend, but it was something that I thought was short and, memorable, all those things that you're saying, uh, if it becomes your own. Uh, and do you advise people to, as soon as if they do create a trending hashtag, to trademark it, as soon as possible, or?
It really depends on your goal. I
Mhm.
didn't, because in my mind,
Mhm.
every time Oscar So White is used, it means that a conversation is happening, and so
Uh-huh.
I don't want to
Uh-huh.
stifle that conversation by sending somebody a cease and desist and saying, you've got to pay me before you use that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, go, use it, have
Uh-huh.
the conversation, because
Mhm.
hopefully, obviously over the years there have been people who haven't used it with the best of intentions, but
Mhm.
primarily it's folks who
Yeah.
want to talk about the lack of
Mhm.
equity and inclusion in
Yeah.
the entertainment industry.
Mhm.
And I'm all for having that
Mhm.
conversation, even if
Yeah.
if I'm not in the room.
Mhm. Great. And have you, in terms of Twitter, have you made an account on Mastodon or Post, or are you on
I have
Discord?
one on Mastodon
Mhm.
specifically. I try to jump on most of the social media platforms that I think that I may use and just hold my name. So I have a placeholder there
Mhm.
for Reign of April on Mastodon, and there are a couple of others, but I'm not
Mhm.
active there
Mhm.
because well, there are a couple of things. Mastodon has several different servers, and so it's hard to
Mhm.
find folks. I'm
Yeah.
still not sure that you can have the same type of robust conversation that you can on Twitter. And
Mhm.
I've got, there's already Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, and and so it's a lot. And so adding
Yeah.
Mastodon and a couple of
Uh-huh.
others to that mix is too much for
Mhm.
me, because I
Mhm.
I run all of my own accounts. If I had a
Mhm.
person that was just posting stuff, I guess that could be done.
Yeah.
But I really like having the interaction, and so
Mhm.
it's if you see me on Twitter, it's actually me on Twitter.
Okay. Yeah. And you'd have to, and for anybody starting, if you have almost 200,000 followers, you're starting on any new platform from scratch.
Yes. I mean, that's not so much of a concern for me
Okay.
at this point.
Mhm.
I think I already have 1,000 followers on Mastodon, and
Uh-huh.
I don't think I've said anything. Like, so, so that's very humbling, right? Because that's
Yeah.
just based on the strength of uh, of,
Mhm.
of what I've done on another
Mhm.
platform, which
Yeah.
is lovely.
Mhm.
But for those folks who have smaller platforms and who use Twitter specifically for work, either to promote their small business, or to have a conversation, or to get speaking gigs or whatever. This back and forth about will Twitter survive into 2023 has to be incredibly concerning. In addition to that, there's just a loss of community. My closest friends, like the people that I will get on a plane for, I have all met through Twitter in the past 10 years. And I'm thankful for them. And obviously, they're going to go with me wherever I go and I with them. But just building that community again, it will be very difficult for people who don't have a platform my size. So I'm concerned about those folks.
And have people turn to you and who are trying to build a brand or build sell a service in social media and asked you what to do?
Yes. I have been reached, people have reached out
Mm-hmm.
who are concerned about what to do and where to go.
Mm-hmm.
There are folks who are working on new and different platforms who have reached
Mm-hmm.
out to me to consult. So, we'll see how it goes. But, I think the number one key on any social media platform is to be authentic and be consistent.
Yeah.
And so I do some teaching for those who are beginning on social media or attempting to start a brand of
Mm-hmm.
some type.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the two keys that I attempt to leave with folks. It needs to be in your voice,
Mm-hmm.
because people want to know who you are, not
Uh-huh.
that
Uh-huh.
the persona that you're creating. And
Yeah.
number two, you have to be consistent. So even if you're not addicted to Twitter and you're only going to be on like twice a week, that's fine. But make sure whatever those 2 times that you show up and you
Mm-hmm.
give your 100% so that people can look forward to the next time you'll be online.
Okay. Do you teach in a university or?
No, not
Oh,
anymore. I did some community college work a
uh-huh.
few years ago,
Uh-huh.
which was a lot. But typically the type of if I'm teaching, it's typically now inside of a corporation,
Okay.
and working with their staff on
Mm-hmm.
either DEIR issues or branding and social media issues, or both.
Okay. Uh, so since that time of, so we're not quite 10 years, right? No, not 10 years. We're,
No, we'll be going
yeah,
into year 8, I think.
8. So can you tell us something about ways in which you have seen a big change? I know in some change in the composition, in the membership of the academy, uh, but overall, are we seeing, would you say the changes have been incremental? And how significant are they?
I think change is always incremental. So I
Mhm.
mentioned the doubling of people of color and women within the Academy membership. The Academy
Mhm.
has also said they've created this new template. So beginning in 2025, to be
Mhm.
nominated for Best Picture, a film has to fit like 2 of the 4 rubrics that they've put out. Now, in my mind, that's really window dressing on a condemned house. Because if you really read what they're trying to say, the loopholes are so significant that you can drive a truck through them. And so it's more flashy, we're doing better, we understand that there's an issue, but no real structural change. So I think that's unfortunate. What inspires me the most right now is that there are filmmakers and actors and actresses who are saying, because we know that incremental change is going to take a while, that they're creating their own production companies. So I think about Michael B. Jordan and Viola Davis, and Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith and so many others who are saying, we are going to create the art that we want to see. We're no longer going to wait for a seat at the table. We're going to build our own mansion and put our own table in it. And so with the advent of streaming services, I think what we see is the ability to get things greenlit slightly easier than only being able to go to the behemoths, the MGMs and the United
Mhm.
Artists and so many others, right? Now that you've got more options, that means that there are increased chances for your project to actually be seen on a screen. The flip side of that is that many of the streaming services are run by older white men. who have the same thought process and the same interests with respect to film and TV that the big studios do, right? And so I think about Quelly TV and other options that marginalized people have to be able to see themselves on screen, because that's what's most important, and you can go from President Obama to, female astronauts to everybody in between. If you think about little kids, you can't be it if you can't see it. And so representation matters in the entertainment that we consume as well, both in front of and behind the camera. Not everybody wants to be, an A-list actor, but knowing that there is an Ava DuVernay who is an amazing director, knowing that there is a Hannah Beachler who's an amazing Black woman production designer, opens the world for people to say, oh, okay, I don't want to act, but I do want to work in film, and here are all these additional things that I can do as well. So those are some of the changes that I think we've seen over the last few years. The BAFTAs, which is basically the British version of our Oscars, have also made significant changes to their membership and how they view films. And so, I think there is more to come over a period of time. It's definitely not happening fast enough for me, because the Golden Globes just came out and there were lots and lots of omissions. I'm not going to say snubs as if anyone deserved a nomination, but I do know that there was a whole bunch of fantastic work by folks that was not recognized. And, not for nothing, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, who puts on the Golden Globes, have had their troubles in the last couple of years, including why they weren't televised, because it was Golden Globes so white as well, because the people.
I mean, they didn't have
not one
color on
That's
the
right.
board.
I think what people don't realize is that for the Academy, Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences, the folks who run the Oscars, you are not required to view the films before you vote. So if you're not watching the movies, but you're saying this film is better than this film, or this actor or performer is better than this one, how are you making that? How are you making that determination without actually seeing the film? Which means that it is a glorified personality and popularity contest. I voted for
there's so much
so-and-so.
Marketing right around
Right,
each.
absolutely. I voted for so and so because I know them, or my manager told me to, or my agent did, and that's unfortunate.
I think I guess the other thing that was, in addition to no, women directors in this for the, in the Golden Globes, there were no, and I hesitate how I say this, but of the films that were all nominated for Best Picture, they're not films that had many Black, actors starring in them. So I don't want to say, Black or white films, but and there were many good candidates.
Absolutely. And it's always interesting to me how you can vote for a director and say, yes, this is one of the 5 best directors. What they did on the screen was unbelievable.
Right.
But not give a nomination to the film that they created or vice versa. This is one of the 10 best films of the entire year, but we're not going to nominate the person whose vision brought that film to life. Those don't seem to make sense to me. The fact that you can do one and not the other. But absolutely, there are films like Till, which was the story of Mamie Till Mobley, Emmett Till's mother, and just this beautiful story of love and what do you do with the loss that you feel. I think of Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Angela Bassett was the first Black woman, I think, ever to be nominated in that category from an action film, and yet it didn't receive any nominations for Best Ensemble Cast or Best Picture for the Globes. So it'll be interesting. I don't subscribe to the theory that the Globes are a precursor to the Oscars or anything else. So we'll see. There's also really a strong discussion to be had about whether we should care about any of them, because they're not representative of the folks who are sitting in the seats, who, you and I, who are paying our hard-earned money,
Mhm.
to either stream a film or to go see
Mhm.
it in a theater or TV show, if we're talking about the Globes. So
Mhm.
why do we care? And
Mhm.
what we also
Mhm.
know is, factually,
Mhm.
especially for people of color, those who have won the Academy Award, for example, don't necessarily see the benefits of
Mhm.
having Oscar winner or even Oscar nominee after their name. The fact that Viola Davis still has to audition for anything is beyond me, right? But she's still fighting to get the
Uh-huh.
types of roles that she wants to
Mhm.
play, and
Mhm.
that's unfortunate for
Mhm.
somebody with her
Mhm.
resume.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
I
Mhm.
think there are lots of conversations, but if we're going to discuss award shows and say that they're still relevant, and query whether they
Mhm.
are, then
Mhm.
they should be more representative for everybody. If
Mhm.
Oscar So White was not just a pro-Black thing, it was a
Mhm.
pro-traditionally underrepresented communities thing. So that
Mhm.
is race, geography, gender, disability, both visible and not, sexual orientation, age. All people who come from marginalized communities deserve to see themselves on screen. And if there are good performances that exemplify those folks, then they should be nominated and be in the conversation.
Thank you. I'm glad it's great to hear you speak out like that. And I did see you say that because it's a much broader your aim is a broader, more Catholic, uh aim. Uh One of the things that I've read about and I wanted to ask you about, and you've talked about it, is that so many films are, marketed to, like, a white audience, but the statistics show that the people who go to the movies and the movies that are bringing in the money are movies starring, Black stars or have been created by Black directors, so, like, sort of what's up with that? Why, there's
The
it's out of touch
It's
with.
the gatekeeper. It's the
Mm.
gatekeepers. The largest growing demographic of
Mhm.
movie goers is
Mhm.
the Latino community. And
Mhm.
but there are no Latino studio heads. There
Mm.
are no Latinos, as far as I know, that are in charge of marketing.
Mhm.
So, so the gatekeepers are the ones that make those decisions. I mean,
Mhm.
having worked sort of on the outskirts of the entertainment industry for this
Mhm.
last 7 or 8 years now, I've
Mhm.
learned a lot of inside baseball. And
Mm.
so, there are, especially around award season, when, folks are ramping up and trying to get things nominated,
Mhm.
there's a finite amount of marketing dollars. And
Mm.
so if whatever studio you want to choose, if
Mhm.
they put out 6 or 7 films, they have to make the decision, okay, we think that this film is going to get nominated, and so we're going to put our
Mhm.
marketing budget behind them.
Yeah.
And then maybe a smaller film, a quieter
Mhm.
film, or a
Mhm.
film led by marginalized communities.
Mhm.
We don't think that that's going to resonate as well with whom? With the voting membership, which is overwhelmingly white and overwhelmingly male. And so
Yeah.
we are not going to put our marketing dollars there. And so
Mhm.
that's really unfortunate.
Mhm.
But if the gatekeepers don't change, the folks who are making the decisions about the marketing dollars,
Mhm.
both during FYC, for your consideration time,
Mhm.
but all through the film, the life cycle of the film, if they
Mhm.
don't change, then we're not going to see. You can't nominate a film that you don't see. Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's part of it too. Ava DuVernay was very vocal about the fact that the streamers, for whatever reason, like famous people who are part of the Academy membership, don't
Uh-huh.
like to sit in theaters with everybody else, and so they get streamers. They get basically little DVDs sent to their homes,
Mhm.
or they get a watermarked version of the
Yeah.
thing that they can watch on their laptop, and that's how they view films. Ava DuVernay was very vocal in saying that the streamers were not sent out for Selma. back in the end of 2014. And so
Mm.
if you don't see it, then there's even less of a chance that you will nominate it, because you have no frame of reference. So
And
all of that
did the
needs to change.
studio respond to that as to why?
I mean, what are they going to say? Oops, I mean, there's nothing for them
Uh-huh.
to say
Mm.
that's going to make them
Mhm.
look good. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's best to say nothing at all.
Mm. Okay. One of the things that you said, like, when we spoke on the phone a little bit before this, you said that there are still like these, obstacles that's like that. Um, when there's a movie being made, there's not somebody on the set who knows how to do a black person's hair, and so they don't get that same, level of care that a white person does. And I guess I was just so surprised because I know that there are strong unions, in Hollywood, that there's no, rule that whether, that there's no discrimination, of getting that kind of help, no matter what color you are.
Right. And that's not just movies, but films. And
Mhm,
I mean, not just movies and films, but TV shows.
mhm,
And I mean, like daytime talk shows,
mm,
in addition
uh-huh,
to,
yeah,
sitcoms or whatever
uh-huh,
you're watching in the
mhm,
evenings. So yes, most of those roles behind the camera are union based, but that's a catch 22. You have to have a certain number of credits under your belt before you can join the union. But
mm,
how do you get those credits by working on a show if you're not part of the union? And so, and
mm,
historically,
mhm,
those types of roles like gaffer and key grip, and and the scroll
mhm,
that we see at the end of films,
yeah,
historically, those things are very often nepotism based. It's a
mhm,
double whammy.
mm,
One is the union, and not always. We think of the unions as great, and they absolutely are, but not always
mhm,
are they welcoming to
mhm,
people of color and women, especially in
mhm,
certain roles behind the
mhm,
camera.
yeah,
So that's part of it. And
mhm,
then the other part is nepotism. My
mm,
uncle was a gaffer, and so I'm going to be a gaffer, and he's going to let me shadow him, and so I'm getting those credits that I need for the
uh-huh,
union until I can
mhm,
become a member. And
mhm,
that stuff is
mhm,
passed down from
yeah,
generation to generation.
mhm,
And so it becomes very difficult for folks. That's why, for example, what Ava DuVernay did with Queen Sugar
mhm,
was so revolutionary. She said in, I think, the 7 seasons that they had,
mhm,
she was going to hire all women directors,
mm,
some of whom
mhm,
had never directed anything before, and some of them who had directed full feature films, like a 2-hour film,
mhm.
but nobody would hire them to direct a 48-minute TV show. It's
Mm.
not, for whatever reason.
Because they don't mix, if you have that experience,
Supposedly,
it
but
doesn't
if you're good, you're good.
yeah.
So yeah, so but that's part of the problem, not
Yeah.
giving people an opportunity. And so
Mhm,
now there was just a special on Oprah's channel on OWN
mhm,
that showed the number of things that all of these women have gone on to do
mm,
since getting one opportunity.
mm,
And so that's why it's so important to, break that door down and then
mhm,
hold it open for the
mhm,
people behind you.
mhm,
Help people up the ladder as you continue to climb it,
mhm,
because nobody is going to do this alone. And when you have the opportunity to amplify, to, like, for me, I'm not in the entertainment industry, but I can use my platform to amplify what is going on. I
mhm,
think everybody has an opportunity, has a responsibility to
mhm.
use whatever platform they have to
Yeah,
make things a little bit better for everyone else.
well said. Well, eloquently said. Something I try to do also. Uh, Great. Uh, so tell us, I know, you're on Twitter a lot, but I know you do, consulting is a big part of what you're doing now, so tell us a little about, uh, the kinds of I know you can't tell us, who you're consulting for, but what kinds of things are you advising a company like HBO, not HBO, but no, a network or an entertainment company, movie company, streaming
Sure.
company?
My goal is to help networks, studios, and corporations be more intentionally inclusive. Period.
Mhm,
So that can mean several different things. I'm a senior advisor at Gage, as you mentioned. And so we make it a script before, something is even fully cast, and work with the screenwriters to say, okay, ooh, this feels a little off. Could you switch this? Could you change this? How about, and provide those notes and feedback. On the other side, if something is already in the can and is ready to go, we may work on marketing strategy. This is the audience that you want to reach. Maybe this is the best way to go about doing that so that you can have the broadest audience possible. Internally, when I work with corporations, it's we have these various ERGs, employee resource groups, but they are not feeling seen, they're not feeling heard. So what can we do internally so that, for example, we've got a burgeoning trans community and we don't have the language to be able to make sure that they feel welcomed and respected and seen. So, how can we help folks with that? So it runs the gamut. It's fascinating work. It's incredibly challenging, but it also feels very rewarding. So, I've worked with A&E Network and Procter and Gamble. I'm a Sephora equity advisor, and so you can see, we did some work. I worked on Soul. I was one of the cultural advisors. I hate titles, so I always roll my eyes. I think cultural advisor or something like that on the animated movie. Pixar Soul.
I saw that. Yeah.
And so it's been incredibly interesting and rewarding to have those conversations and help bring people into, at least the 21st century.
Do you find your training as a lawyer is very helpful in that kind of consulting work?
It can be. I like to think that I'm very persuasive. I know that I read well. I know that I write well. I know that I speak well. I know that I can make a good argument. A lot of that came from, training as a lawyer and experience as a lawyer. And so I use all the skills that I can because, as we talked about before, change is hard. And people don't want to necessarily even believe that it's necessary, much less want to implement it.
And that's your job. That's what you're hired for, right?
That's
So,
right.
yeah. And just if I could ask you, when you were growing up, did you want to be a lawyer? Did you want to be a filmmaker? Did you want to be nothing to do with any of that?
By the time I was in high school, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer for the same things, love to argue, love debate club and that kind of thing. And my mother had a law degree and chose not to practice in part because she became pregnant with me. And so I was sort of fulfilling, a promise to her and a dream that she had for herself that she put on hold for me. So, it was wonderful while it lasted. I'm happily not practicing anymore and really enjoy the work that I'm doing now.
That's awesome. One of the things I always ask everyone is to name their 3 women to follow. So I'm going to do that now. And so we're going to go through this. April, who are your 3 women to follow?
My first is Fanchen Cox, who's a good friend that I just had dinner with the other night. She is not only the president of True Julo Media, as we were talking about people creating their own production companies. This is hers, but she is also one of the co-creators of the Inclusion Rider, which Frances McDormand famously mentioned a few years ago on the Oscar stage as she was accepting her Oscar, which is really, again, about being inclusive, intentionally inclusive, both in front of and behind the camera. So it's all about ensuring that you're being thoughtful about the people who are working on your set and giving the opportunities to folks that may not have them otherwise.
Great.
Dr. Ana Cristina Romo is fantastic. She is the Director of Entertainment and Media Research Initiative for UCLA. And they put out a diversity report every year, which is incredibly insightful about how well the entertainment industry is doing or is not doing. And so, I comb over that thing every single time because it's got a lot of information, not only about where we are, but potentially where we're going. And so she's just a great person to know and follow, despite the fact that her Twitter account is currently locked down. But definitely go and read the report. If you have any interest whatsoever in the entertainment industry, you're going to get great information from them.
I know you connected me to the report, and I did look at it. It's very detailed. It's very good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And last but not least is Valissa Thompson, who is the founder of Ramp Your Voice, and is a stalwart on issues of disability. You know, as I mentioned, Oscar So White is for all marginalized communities, including those people who have disabilities, both visible and not. And so she has just taught me so much. Just following her Twitter account has been incredibly helpful to me, to learn things that I didn't know, to be more thoughtful about the language that I use, you know, and to be able to amplify other folks in the disability space who are doing amazing work. And as you see, she coined the disability to white hashtag as well. So she's just a great follow on Twitter, and I'm happy to have made the connection with her.
Well, these are awesome, and I will be following them. Thank you, April. Really appreciate you being with us. And I guess I have wanted to ask you final thoughts. What final thoughts? You know, I know you're not in the industry, but are closely tied. So for somebody who is thinking of going into the industry, you know, what kind of advice would you give them at this point?
Oh, for people that are going, you know, again, I'm not part of the industry, so I'm not sure I'm the best person to give the advice, but I would say, you know, create a circle of people that you can trust. Find yourself a mentor, somebody that has done the thing. And you need both a mentor and a sponsor. And this is good whether you're in the entertainment industry or otherwise. So the mentor is a person who can show you around, who can give you advice. The sponsor, and they may not be in your industry, they may not work at the company that you want to work for. The sponsor is the person who speaks your name when you're not in the room. That's the person who can actually make things happen for you. And that's why it's important to have both a mentor and a sponsor. You know, and be intentional. And as I mentioned before, just, you know, prop that door open once you get through it, because there's always somebody behind you who would love to be where you are.
That's great advice. I've heard that now I interviewed someone from Intel who talked about the mentor and a sponsor being so important, um, and keeping that door open for the next person is so important. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, April. Really an honor and a thrill to have you with me today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for the conversation, Rose.
Yeah, no, really. Thank you. And I will continue to follow you. And I love your humor and your perceptive comments. So you're really a pleasure to follow on Twitter. And I hope the platform survives. So, yes. For myself, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like, you know, to leave the platform is to kowtow to, you know, to his bullying, you know, the bullying that we see. And I don't think we're quite there yet, but so
Okay.
yeah. So if you just wait for me a little backstage, I'm just gonna make an announcement. And thank you so much. And we'll keep in touch. And thank you. Thank you everyone for joining me. I want to wish everyone a great new year. I think this will be my last live stream show before the new year. I also do some shows on Twitter Spaces or Clubhouse or other audio platforms. And I've also put out a podcast now that you can find on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. The first one is, the idea is to give some highlights of my shows, since my shows are about an hour, to give highlights of some of the golden nuggets, the great words of some of my guests. So the first one is out, and it's about some of the the things that my first guest, Kirsten Alana, who's a travel photographer and blogger, said. So take a listen. And you can find it just asking for Woman to Follow. And I'd also like to talk about Digimentors, which I'm part of, is doing a Sunday show with Megan Trilio, who's a senior editor at the New York Times, and it's always a great show. So it's this Sunday at 8:30. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. Best Happy New Year for everyone. And I will see you in 2023. Thank you very much.